phase of transition. And the second phase of transition, we asserted that it is about radical socio-economic transformation. And we're saying that because of our experience in the last 2 decades, that there's this three resilient fault lines which are facing us, starkling the eyes: unemployment, poverty, and inequality in our country. And the strategy and tactics this time around is getting into detail on the challenges we are faced with, subjectively, and the objective conditions are within which we are operating. Hence, the theme of the strategy and tactics this year is about the organizational integrity, organizational renewal. It's about strengthening this vehicle towards the creation of a national democratic society. And this is where we are heading to, and this is the kind of society we aspire to be in South Africa. And in us doing that, we noted as we're making presentation, that for the very first time in our movement, we decided to take the issue of organization, lift it up to a strategic level. Because we say that in the process, in our own process of social transformation, we've got to make our delegates understand that we will achieve our objective, our strategic objective of creating a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society if we deal with subjective factors which hinder us as a movement to implement and execute our project of a national democratic revolution. So we are at the point now where we looked at where we are, what are the balance of forces internationally. And to that effect, we were observing that the world is changing. The world is changing, and it's changing not for the better, for progressive forces in the world. Firstly, there are positive developments. The technological advances in our society, the fact that the regions in the periphery of the mainstream are able to organize and mobilize themselves as both political and economic countermeasure to the status quo. The regional blocs, be they in the Gulf region, be they in the BRICS and so on and so forth, are organizing themselves. But we also say that with those positives, there are negatives, because you see the global geopolitical situation where the forces are moving towards right, center-right, and to a certain degree, even contemplating a possibility of far-right being a factor in world politics. If you look at what happened during the process of elections in France, for instance, when the Socialist Party was ousted, but for the very first time, the party of Le Pen became a factor and a force, which says to us that even as you look at Germany with Merkel at the helm, going for her 4th term, you would see that that points to center-right and the whole of Europe. It means, therefore, progressive forces and forces which would be lenient to our agenda are under serious strain. And we look at the fact that you are seeing the ascendancy of narrow nationalism. And this narrow nationalism and chauvinism, where they are talking about the US and so on, is ascending against the backdrop of a weaker global progressive movement. And as they ascend, there are reasons for that. It's easy for them to be populist and so on, precisely because across the globe there is a general lack of authority amongst the elites, political and economic elites. So people see the leadership across the world not being able to deal with issues of inequality in the world. Issues such as migration, issues such as terrorism, for instance. And anybody who comes and say that we are going to come up with solutions to that, people move towards that. And the progressive forces can do much in mobilizing themselves. If we look, for instance, at how BRICS, or where BRICS is currently, we make a point that it wasn't going to be easy for BRICS to think that easily they would have challenged the status quo and be left alone. You look at India, what has happened in India with the Indian Congress at the helm, and persistently organization against it on the ticket of Indian Congress being corrupt until the elections, when it was outset of power. If you look at the elections in Brazil, which elected President Rousseff, but the campaign after that, which campaign was an alternative to general elections, and ending up being ousted as the president in Brazil. You look at the attempts of even contemplating military aggression against Russia, perhaps only to find that from that point of view, Russia has been ready militarily, or its posture. China has been difficult because the hyperpower which we talk about in the strategy and tactics, United States itself owes China a lot. But we are also looking into our own situation here in South Africa, that we've been a stable democracy and we continue to be. There would be a wish to circumvent the electoral process, be they the call of vote of no confidence to the President of the Republic of South Africa and so on. All of this boils to one factor, that BRICS have never left unchecked and unchallenged, because if it was according to BRICS, all other things were going to be in place, and you were going to have BRICS as pursuing this developmental trajectory as opposed to the multilateral institutions the world over and so on. So we took this and came closer to home in our own continent, Africa, focusing delegates and cadres of the movement and steeping them on the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, a prosperous Africa, a developmental Africa, a peaceful Africa, with all the challenges the continent has. And noting that out of 10 fastest growing economies in the world, 7 of them are found on the continent, Africa. And those are some of the positive things which we say that the Africa Rise narrative is going to survive or not based on how aggressively leadership of the continent work together for the integration of the continent based on this very Agenda 2063 and the aspirations thereof. And we come home to South Africa and say that we've got to take stock of what has happened last year, particularly in the local government elections, looking at the African National Congress as the ruling party or governing party and its allies. And we make bold that we are at our weakest since 1994 in terms of our cohesive force as the alliance. And we say that subjectively, we need to address this. We need to address it if we are to continue with the project of building a national democratic society and a developmental state. We also, and we say that it's possible. And we say that the postulation that liberation movements stall after attaining freedom is not based on any science, to the extent that the root causes are understood in our situation as subjective. We affirm that if we correct those subjective factors, we would be able to continue with the project of transforming our society with the ANC at the helm. We look around us, we look at different liberation movements, some who indeed fell flat after attaining freedom, especially 2 decades thereafter. We can talk of UNIP here, our neighbors, but we also have examples where liberation movements, long after that, they still continued to lead society. We have Namibia, we have SWAPO, our neighbors here, who have been at the helm of that nation for more than decades. It doesn't mean that they didn't have challenges. At one point, SWAPO was going down in terms of support by the people of Namibia, but they were able to reclaim the lost ground, which we are saying we should as the African National Congress, and they were able to self-correct themselves as the ruling party in Namibia. But we also have Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania, has been at the helm of a fraternal party again with the African National Congress over years, which has been at the helm of Tanzania since '62 for about 5 decades and so on. So what we are saying to the cadres of the movement is that the ANC's mission is to build a national democratic society, is to contribute to create a humane world. It is in the hands of ourselves working and reconnecting with our allies and the people, because the gap between the African National Congress and the people would create difficulties for the ANC, because the ANC is where it is because of the people. And the level of discussion and some contribution from cadres is much better, I must say, compared to cadres came prepared. They were able to deal with such issues as the economy of the country and how we look at our relationship with private capital, which, as you know in the document, and our position that ours is unity and struggle. Our relationship with the private capital is unity and struggle. And we maintain that, including with monopoly capital. And our stance has always been moving from the fact that monopoly capital has to be addressed, understanding the colonial character of the economy of South Africa. And our approach is monopoly capital. What that means is that whether today white monopoly capital is a dominant force within our economy, or maybe 100 or 50 years from now, it becomes black monopoly capital. Our attitude is on monopoly capital, that we cooperate and contest. Our relationship is that one of cooperation and contestation. But to the extent of the what is in the public discourse on this matter, on white monopoly capital, we submitted that it's a fallacy for anybody to say that there is no white monopoly capital in South Africa. It's basically denying our understanding and how we characterize South Africa as a colonialism of a special time. That our struggle was about dismantling national oppression, which is in the intersection of race, class, and gender. And what we are today, we are living that kind of legacy. Hence the emphasis on the second phase of transition on radical socio-economic transformation. But we also want comrades who were talking much about white monopoly capital and said to them, there's nothing wrong in them expressing that. But they must understand that they are expressing a form, not content. The content is monopoly capital. In South Africa, it took a form and it takes a form of white monopoly capital, which says that we shouldn't be aspiring to be changing white monopoly capital for black monopoly capital. The uncompetitive nature of monopoly capital makes us raise an issue of contestation, whether it would be black or white. But you don't have to deny a fact out of long history of colonization in South Africa. So that's what we basically spoke about. And as we concluded on this matter, we emphasized the point that this vehicle, which is going to ensure that we deepen and accelerate the pace of radical socio-economic transformation, which is the African National Congress, has to clean up its act in terms of its systems. Its systems should have integrity. If you talk of membership system of the ANC, for instance, it should be, without doubt, have integrity. We look at the leadership and the selection of leadership of the organization, and we say that our perspective on leadership, selection, the document through the eye of a needle, should get a higher status in the movement, so that it's not just referred to only when you go to conference and so on, but it's there to guide leaders or members and cadres of the movement as we move and do our day-to-day basis. And we hope that it is also in the hands of the ANC to change its fortunes for better, understanding the world we operate in, and knowing that we still have a struggle and a contribution to make to finalize the decolonization project on the continent with the last colony, the Western Sahara. That the Sahrawi people, it is in the hands of humanity to ensure that they also get their self-determination, their independence like any other nation in the world, unlike what is happening now when it's occupied by a neighboring country, which is Morocco. I'll end there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Comrade Nathi. Ladies and gentlemen, as you ready yourselves to ask questions, let me just reiterate the reason why we have these briefings. Firstly, because we are a transparent organization. Our policies are developed in a transparent manner, and what Comrade Nathi was taking you through is the thinking that guides the work of the ANC. So building on the foundation, the theoretical foundation that he had outlined, we'll be able to look at the sectoral policy issues as indicated. And secondly, just to keep you busy and entertained, okay, I'm going to take, if you only have one round of questions, that's fine, but let me take the first round and see how we go. I've got one there, which is Ranjeni, number 2 at the back, number 3. Okay, I'm going to suppress you, number 4, number 5. Okay, let me give you a chance. Number 6, you'll be number 6. In that order, please, Ranjeni.
Thank you, Kusela. Minister, I'm Ranjini from Times Media. Was there any concern? Was there any concern in the discussion as yet about how a foreign family was able to come into our country and hijack the ANC and hijack its decision-making power and take over decision-making in the state? And was there any discussion as to how the strategy and tactics document can be adapted to prevent that happening in future? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2. Please help us move the microphone, guys. It's quicker. Right at the back.
Thank you, Lester from eNCA. Firstly, in terms of WMC, what particular sectors do you think this focuses on? White monopoly capital. What do you think are the industries affected by this? And secondly, in terms of BRICS.
Sorry, Lester. Come again.
When you mention the discussion regarding white monopoly capital, what particular industries or sectors do you think this affects the most? And secondly, when it comes to BRICS, you have the BJP, you have Russia Unite, you have the Brazilian Democratic Movement, 3 parties in government who are socially conservative in their ideology. What does that then mean for a block of emerging markets if 3/5 of those current governments in power are ideologically incongruent?
Thank you. Manelis Tubasa from the SABC. Minister, you are correctly saying that your organization is at its weakest since 1994. And obviously, the causes for this are known. You yourselves have said it repeatedly: corruption, looting, incompetency, and so on. What prevents you from confronting this phenomenon? Why can't we just deal with them? Why do you organize policy conferences and workshops and all that? Why can't we deal with it?
Thank you.
Good day, Minister. I'm Ayanda Mdluli, the business editor of the African Times. Just like to get an understanding with the shift in the geopolitical situation. Are we seeing any ripple effects coming onto South Africa? And then also, what's the status on the BRICS Development Bank? Is it still viewed as a viable alternative to the Bretton Woods institution? And what's the way forward with that? Thank you.
Number 5 there.
My name is Teto Mahlakwana from Business Day. My question is on the political economy. My question is on the political economy, more especially directly related to the acceleration of technology you mentioned across the world. What are the discussions in line with policy alignment to the future, especially in relation to the fourth industrial revolution and the kind of dynamic change that we are seeing happen currently and is still coming in the future, in line with ensuring that the country can pit against others across the world without having to mention the other motive forces that could distract the ANC from achieving its ultimate goal? That is it.
Okay, that's the last one.
No, thanks. Well, the first question is that Ranjeni, we were not in the current affairs session. So it's a strategy and tactics of the ANC which looks at, as I said, the balance of forces and looking at the African National Congress own subjective weaknesses and strengths. So yes, we didn't entertain current affairs. In fact, that's what we think that would come from a detail. It's not a detail, not a document for details. Many other sectoral commissions are sitting now, so they are dealing with those things. Look, listen, the issue about the white monopoly capital, basically comprador bourgeoisie in our country, are in all sectors of society, be they in financial services sector, the banking sector, we'll talk about the big four. In insurance, you'll talk about the big four. So it goes. Whether it's in construction sector, you would know. So the comprador bourgeoisie in South Africa takes the form of race, basically. So it has to be an issue. It has to be an issue, and one of the ways of illustrating the point of the need to focus on this question, I actually underlined it by quoting Comrade Blade Nzimande of the General Secretary of the Communist Party on this matter, who actually emphasized this point in 2007, which I agree with totally, that there should be an effort to dislodge white monopoly capital from its hold of the economy of South Africa. So it's across the board. I think, Manelisi, you may question the level at which corruption, in fact, it's a concoction of issues which are affecting the African National Congress. One, the level of development of cadres of the movement politically and ideologically, that training which we are responsible for, and correctly so, cadres questioning it, because we said the building of a political school would take place after the 2012 National Conference, which has not happened, and we are able to give reasons for that. But to the extent of implementing the program, its effectiveness vary from one area to the other, because the issue of cadre development and steeping cadres in both theoretical and ideological framework is a two-way process, which needs also appetite from both those who are carrying out the project and those who are receiving the project. The issue of how people abuse state power at all levels, here from local government to national and so on. But I think that we can argue on the level of those issues, corruption in particular, being attended to. But I think we have necessary mechanisms in South Africa of dealing with such. There are things we have not been able to effectively deal with, mainly internal in the organization. As I mentioned, that the issue of political development of cadres to be able to deal with whatever situation they are faced with and create this all-rounded cadre of the movement are some of the weaknesses which we have. So I would say that in all the structures of the organization, that is being dealt with. Corruption is being fought in South Africa. There are institutions geared, established precisely for that. Perhaps if we have to give details of individuals who were found to be corrupt or doing corrupt things, some of them who are cadres and leaders of the ANC, that can be done. The question is whether that is enough or not, or we are doing enough on that, and that can be argued. But I think that we didn't create institutions to fight crime for its sake. No, I think the issue is that, the question from Ayanda, I think the issue here is that there are things which need to be done to ensure that the hope is restored to the people, especially the nations of the South and the emerging market economies in particular. BRICS, as I said, that it was established to be this political and economic countermeasure. It has its own programs, its own perspectives, because if it's going to be an alternative, all other institutions are important, BRICS Bank, and all others, as developmental institutions, as opposed to your orthodox institutions you have, which to this far has been there to serve those who are better off in the world, as it were. So there is hope for this. There will be challenges. BRICS Bank is up and running currently. The processes of establishing the regional chapter of the bank here in South Africa, here in Johannesburg, is also unfolding, as it were. I think we can only say that South Africa stands to benefit from the development, technological development generally, both technological, scientific, and so on. We also are making our own contribution. But we believe that if we do much on this score, we stand a chance, which we should. We stand a chance of not being a spectator and be passed by the developments only to follow than making our own contribution. In the area of science, for instance, so much has happened in South Africa through South Africa's own contribution to the world. But I think that we don't look at it only from the point of technology as technology. Again, it has to do with the welfare of society, including the development or contribution in the development economically of our country. We do stand a chance as South Africa, but we believe that, as you would know, that from a foundation point of view, the most emphasis has been made, even educational, that we need to strengthen our standing, particularly in such subjects as maths and science in South Africa, so that we make our own contribution here. Thanks. Well, BRICS share a perspective. I don't know who asked the question, Lister. It means I missed that point. No, the very fact that you have BRICS, it's precisely because the countries, member countries of BRICS, do share a perspective. And a perspective which says that the multilateral institutions of the world as they stand do not necessarily serve the purpose of the emerging, the developing nations of emerging markets economies. They do not share that. So therefore, if you hear, for instance, Africa raising an issue of UN, for instance, the Security Council of UN, the representation and all those things, if you look at most of the countries are not at the center of decisions within the multilateral institutions, they become appendages of such. And the philosophy that if, for instance, we are going to be having a BRICS bank will not be based on, for instance, structural adjustment facility of IMF and so on and so forth, which is not developmental, as it were. So there will be emphasis and de-emphasis on different strands of ideologies. But at the broader level, and looking at what is happening in the world and what BRICS seeks to do through its own experience in interacting with the status quo, there is convergence insofar as that is concerned. And for us, that's an important one, that you emphasize those things which you agree on, which are macro in terms of the global perspective. Thanks. I'm sorry for that question, I didn't.
Thanks, Comrade Nathi. Do we have any other questions for our next round? Okay, I'll start with the ones who haven't spoken. Lady in the red will be the first, followed by the gentleman next to her. Mapepeza will be number 3. Let me take you, Sam Kelo and Sam. So that's number 4 and 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we close it. Thank you very much. In that order, you may start, ma'am.
Hi, Tanisha Phillips at Kaya News. Mr. Mthethwa, I wanted to ask you, you referred to liberation movements sort of falling flat after 2 decades. Does the ANC consider itself flat or still falling?
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Eric Nathi from The Citizen. I've been wondering whether the ANC has ever contemplated moving from where it is now to being a party that is more moving towards the center right, where other parties after the fall of the Soviet Union had decided. Because from the people that I spoke to, it emerged that the ANC has been caught up in a dilemma where you remain in one place as a liberation movement because you don't want to move away from that. Whereas after the fall of the Soviet Union, many parties changed from the left towards the right.
Like which one?
I'm not sure about the exact, but I know that in countries in the former Eastern Bloc, they did not remain, after the fall of the Soviet Union, they did not remain as leftist party, but more as socialist Democrats. Has the ANC ever contemplated that? And the second question is, you mentioned the challenges that were facing BRICS, like the political problems in India and Brazil. I've been wondering as well whether you think who is actually behind this. I know you mentioned problems that are in the institutions, the multilateral institutions, but is there really a situation where you say there is a political conspiracy against South Africa or the BRICS countries?
Thank you very much. Number 3. Samkelo in front.
Samkelo Masego from Jacaranda FM News. Thank you for the opportunity. My question would be, have you as the ANC reached a point of stagnation where, looking also at your diagnostic reports by the Secretary General, he cites that your branches, where I would assume that's where your proposals come from, is basically ideologically bankrupt, which is cited in the SG's report, which was presented here. Have you as the ANC reached a point of stagnation in achieving the national democratic revolution? And what clear plans and tactics do you have in curbing the stagnation that you are falling in the route of other liberation movements? Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Stephen from Mapepeza newspaper. My question, Mr. Mthethwa, is you said the theme is organizational renewal and a renewal of integrity within the leadership. I was asking, is that a way of saying that you are proposing maybe stricter measures to hold the corrupt officials and anyone who is in the membership who is doing maybe something contravening its policies more accountable, maybe having stricter measures using that theme? And then my second question is that in terms of saying that since ANC is a party of the people and we want to strengthen the communication between the two, have you any plans and strategies that you have maybe conjured up in those commissions in terms of renewing the communication barrier between the communication bridge between the people and the organization. And one other concern between branches is that policies are having a legislative language which is very difficult to translate and comprehend and even send to the to lower people as a resolution or a message. So has the ANC come up with a strategy of using our indigenous language, which are official in this country, to maybe interpret some of the documents, make them simpler and more understandable to its constituents? Thank you.
Thank you. Move the mic down. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Sam Kokeli from Bloomberg News. Please forgive me if the question has been asked. It might just be similar to some Kelos. Mr. Mthethwa, you mentioned a number of examples of liberation movements as struggling and the strengths of various. You mentioned SWAPO and Chama Chama Pinduzi and the Indian Congress. I'm just wondering if you've looked closely at what happened with the Indian Congress, because the problems are quite similar to what you guys are talking about now. Corruption, factionalism, dynastic politics, which is creeping up in South Africa now. Do you have any practical measures and timelines in the short term, especially in the context of the 2019 elections, that you will implement to avoid the ANC losing power? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we come over to this side? Number 6 was gentleman in the blue jacket.
Turkmen Terzi from Turkish Active News. Mr. Mthethwa, you mentioned about Sahara and Gulf region politics. Especially after the collapse of Gaddafi regime, North Africa faced security problems. Mali and Somalia for long term, and Nigeria, some part of Nigeria. Do you see any external security risk towards South Africa? And are you closely watching spying activities of foreign countries in South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mthethwa.
Good morning, Minister. My name is Dumela Mateza from the SABC. I've got 2 questions. One of the questions, I read through all these papers that were submitted. I haven't come across the word coalition. Don't we think we might have to, at some stage, be in a coalition with somebody? My other question is, if we are fighting for the liberation of the Sahrawi, are we doing the same with Tibet? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 8.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Simpier from SABC TV News. Is it fair to say that after this conference that the ANC and its cadres will be speaking of monopoly capital and not white monopoly capital? And the second question is, in terms of economic transformation and white monopoly capital, was there a sentiment at all from the delegates that in actual fact government is culpable in institutionalizing white monopoly capital through the PIC? We have a ShopRite CEO who received 50 million rand, and the PIC is a shareholder in ShopRite. You have the current battle at Group 5, and the PIC is a major shareholder in that company as well. And the final question is on the integrity of the ANC. Was there view at all that ANC members who face criminal charges should not be standing for leadership roles? Thanks.
Thank you. I had one final question. Behind you? Who's behind you? Yeah.
Jan de Lange from Report newspaper. The General Secretary's diagnostic report says that, and I think this has been going around, being heard, but I think it's the first time it's officially acknowledged, that prior to the August elections, the ANC's own survey showed that more than 50% of the population is not happy with the direction the ANC is taking the country. I'm not aware of anything that happened since the election that would change that. That means that if that translates into votes, that in July 2019, you are going to sit around a table and trying to force and agree with other political parties on a coalition. Now, wouldn't it be prudent for the ANC, if that's the case, if you see the writing on the wall, to use this conference to plan in terms of policy, what you can do after July 2019 and what not, what is supposed to be given and what is to be fought for. Can you expand on that?
Let me thank you very much for those incisive questions. I actually wish some of you were in the commissions yourselves, raising very critical issues. I just want to make the point that, remember, we are going to get into the sectoral discussion. So issues around the fourth industrial revolution, the issues around community media, some of the economic questions, we will have detailed briefings. Tomorrow is going to be a busy day on those issues. So while Comrade Nathi may not dwell much on them, please rest assured that we're coming back to them. Thanks.
Thanks, Kusela, and thanks for the question. No, on the first question, we are actually saying, the name is Tilish, we are actually saying that here is the objective reality which we are faced with as African National Congress. And we say to members of the organization that if we do not confront the kind of things which we are faced with, we run a danger, or will face a danger as the African National Congress. As you know, that 23 years on, the ANC is not flat. It's a warning which we are making to our members that those who trotted this path before us, be it Nicaragua, for instance, there were things which kept on coming, both internal and external. Because in most cases you have your own internal problems which gets exacerbated by external forces for their own ends. The project of regime change will always be with us, whether subtle or in very visible ways. What becomes important is that internally you should know what your weaknesses are and strengthen them. And we believe that as we get into the details on the actual program of action, we'll be able to turn around the situation. I was interested in that question that after the fall of Soviet Union, after Mikhail Gorbachev, forces of the left changed and became right. I wanted to know that force. I can't recall of any in the world. But just to restate, the ANC is a disciplined force of the left. It chose sides for a very practical reasons of our own experience in South Africa. It chose to side and to take an anti-colonial, anti-imperialist stance because as South Africa we became a victim of such. And will not change that stance. Will not change it because it defines you as being part of the broader global progressive family as opposed to conservative families. So we're correct on that. We chose this side and will continue on that with all strands within the African National Congress as a broad church, ideologically having people who believe in socialism, who are members of the ANC. We have capitalists in the ANC, we have nationalists and so on. All of these people were united and are united under the project of National Democratic Revolution, which is about defeating racial oppression in South Africa. And indeed, it was defeated in 1994. That's why we're emphasizing that it's an old-held perspective in the ANC that political freedom alone is hollow. You would need economic freedom. If you look at the body of work and literature in the ANC, will point you to that fact. Hence, we're emphasizing that we have reached that point at focusing, because remember what we are saying in the strategy and tactics is that in 1994, strategically we captured the beachhead. Not the entire army, it's the beachhead which we captured in 1994. Going forward, we need to capture the entire army, as it were. In that sense, the emphasis on radical socio-economic transformation. Well, I did say that it wasn't going to be easy for BRICS to, grow on its own without being attended to by the status quo, the dominant forces in the world. There are people who would support the growing of BRICS from different regions of where BRICS member countries come from. But they are not going to get, they are not going to be loved by everybody. It's politics. They are not going to be loved by everybody. And if there is no way of changing the regime peacefully, we have seen that the status quo will even use military means to get to that. If you look at Libya, what is happening, and there is an important piece of work by John Perkins on the economic hitman. It's a very interesting piece, which actually outlines the interest of dominant forces in the world, in the West in particular, US leading that. Well, Samkel, your question is contradictory. You talk of ideologically bankrupt assessment by Comrade Gwede Mantashe, the Secretary General, and you talk stagnation. If the assessment is that there is a level of political bankruptcy in the organization, it means there is an opportunity to deal with that bankruptcy through deepening ideological and theoretical training. And by the way, it's not a general point in the diagnostic report, because as I said earlier on, in some, it's from one area to the other. You'll have regions and provinces which are much more steeped theoretically and practically in the perspective and ideology of the African National Congress, whilst others are falling behind. So there is that reality which is there. and we'll continue to do our work. As I'm saying that from 2012 conference, the process of training cadres of the movement has been continuing, and it will continue even after this policy conference and after the national conference. Just last week, we launched the political school online. And the ANC political school online is precisely what we have been training our cadres on, in terms of the curriculum there and the syllabus of that online. So yes, to the extent that we detect bankruptcy in the organization and within the structures of the movement, we are called upon to deepen our training and our work, our political work, which we can't say that we are satisfied with what we have done, precisely because part of the challenge was that by now, having secured land for the political school, we thought by now we'd be having bricks and mortar. But capacity, resource-wise, have not given us that to have it. But it's still a very important matter for us because it's life and death. What has sustained the African National Congress for more than 105 years, or more, 105 years, is precisely its distinct characteristics of umkhabulo. That whether you were in exile or at Robben Island or internally, one thing, political education has been the lifeblood of the African National Congress. And once we run thin there, we will be like any other party, which will survive sometimes because of objective conditions. As I said, that part of the reason why you see the ascendancy on narrow nationalism, particularly, and populism, is precisely because of the fact that there are very fundamental questions which leadership the world over has not been able to answer. Issues of unemployment, as I said, terrorism and so on, recently migration and all those things. So we don't have a choice as African National Congress because there is no ANC without political education. The renewing of communication with people is what is going to be key, because we say in order for us to reclaim lost ground, we need to strengthen our interaction and our communication with the members of the ANC, the branches of the ANC, and the society at large. Branches of the ANC here, from the understanding that they are the agents for change in society. So if we strengthen and build them, they are going to be able to assist in what the ANC has to do. The issue of language and documents, who would wish for that? I think solely from the point of view of perhaps resources and the fact that you would also need to have some interaction between members of the organization. That's why you don't have all or documents in all other languages, as it were. And we believe that we need to strengthen our organizational integrity, precisely because both human and otherwise, within the movement, has got to be strengthened on this level. Because from the point of view of leaders and members of the organization, if we do not raise this matter and focus on it, we would lose the essence of what the ANC has always been about.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry to interrupt. There's a car that's blocking somebody who's been trying to go out for the last 30 minutes. It's a black BMW VMM 272. Please, won't you move it? Thanks.
Thank you. Well, the practical steps is a very important point asked by Sam. And these practical points talk to the detail, which will include current affairs, actually. We will come out of the process of the sectoral discussions and engagement, because there we've got to go beyond our strategic focus and get into the nitty-gritties of the workings of the organization and say, on this matter, how do we deal with practically? If you have raised an issue in the diagnostic report, for instance, that there is an issue about gatekeeping, what is it that you want to do practically to deal with gatekeeping and so on? So it is going to, practical steps are important and would be coming out of this. Pratumil, he asked the questions and the question and left. Oh, okay. So I thought you are home now. No, I don't want to believe that you take an issue on the stance to give solidarity to the Sahrawi people. I don't understand you that way, that it's a necessity. And as we said, boldly so, that all what we are saying is that the people of Western Sahara should be given an opportunity for their own self-determination. They've called for a referendum. It's been years now, since 1991 and so on. But nothing has come to the fore. What the people of Palestine are faced with is exactly what people of Western Sahara are faced with. In fact, even worse, because they are a forgotten people today. If you ask South Africans how many people know Western Sahara or have heard about Sahrawi people in their own continent, there may be few. If you ask anybody to tell you what is happening in Western Sahara, the blackout, media included, you know, and it has not been an issue in some quarters. So we are not saying anything about Morocco. We are just saying that give the people of Western Sahara an opportunity to test through a referendum on their own self-determination. And that is important for us, especially this year when we dedicated the year to OR Tambo and what Western Sahara through Polisario Front meant to OR Tambo. That his view has always been that we should do everything in our power to ensure that the people of Western Sahara enjoy their freedom on this continent, Africa. South Africa, the African National Congress particularly, has always been one with the one China policy. You would remember that a few years ago, Hong Kong was reintegrated back to China. So this has been a long-standing understanding and perspective between the African National Congress and the Communist Party of China, the One China policy. So we have not changed on that. We are stuck on that particular position. And yes, we have not spoken about coalition. We've not spoken about coalition. You see, the fact of the matter is that the African National Congress has to get its house in order for its own good and for the good of the people of South Africa. We don't believe that we should be preoccupying ourselves with coalitions. Firstly, it's a very self-defeatist position or stance to take, you know. But secondly, we have conviction that we know what answers are, and those answers are in our hands, and we should actually do that which we say are our weaknesses, correct them, reclaim the lost ground, reconnect with our people, so that even those who have lost hope, because remember that part of the problem of the ANC losing some of the major cities in the country was precisely because of not being able to attend to some of the things which we know which have been raised, or attending them not fully. And what we are saying is that it's in our hands. If we want to be partial about it, the possibility is that we will partially lose support. If we want to go all out and address that which we say ourselves, nobody's telling us, it's us who are saying it. And we then would be able to turn the corner. So it's up to us. I don't know what people would say after the policy conference. Remember, these are draft. What's his name again? Aldrin. Yeah. These are draft policy documents. Until conference in December adopts them, for now, they are discussion documents. All what we're saying is that monopoly capital, our attitude should not change, our attitude to it, and that is cooperation and contestation. It shouldn't change, and it won't change, as it were. And what is also not going to change is to understand that monopoly capital is the content we are dealing with, emanating from our understanding on the colonialism of a special type thesis. And out of that, the form in South Africa takes race. That is why people correctly are pointing out to monopoly capital. And the supporting of some of the institutions you mentioned here is about that, is about understanding our relationship with monopoly capital, which is cooperation and contestation. The level of which, whether it's contestation or cooperation, would be in the balance of evidence. But to the extent that you emphasize radical socio-economic transformation, you would have heard what the Minister Kigaba has said about this lever in the hands of South African government in the form of resources, PIC included, that it should be seen to be responding to that question going forward of radical socio-economic transformation. And therefore, you will have no excuse not to be deliberate about it, to ensure that the process and the program of building black industrialists is happening and becomes visible in South Africa, as it were. Yes, the research did raise issues, and what is to be done. And I think the level whether would be able to change fortunes for the African National Congress would be more on the outcome both of the policy conference as a continuation, because as I said, whatever we're going to come up with here will form part of the continuation. Remember that just before the national conference in December, we are going to have what you heard now, which is provincial general council, consolidating positions. So what is going to come out of here will give an indication on the kind of direction we want to take as the African National Congress as we approach the national conference in December. And to that extent, I think it would be important that we interact with the product out of this, even after this very conference itself. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes this briefing. There will be no more briefings today. We're going to have a long day tomorrow. So as soon as the commission start reporting back to plenary, when they conclude, they will come back now and give us the final recommendations coming from commissions. I'm sure we won't repeat strategy and tactics and organizational